Yo, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back. Thanks for stopping by. Today we are going to talk about The Last of Us, as I just finally finished it this weekend, Friday afternoon. I finally got through this story, and I have to say I loved it. But let's kind of go into why this story is amazing, or why this game was awesome, as well as why I can see why other people absolutely hated it. So let's just chat about it, right? So we start off in Jackson. We meet Ellie and Joel 4 years after the events of the first game. And immediately you know that something's off between them. Something happened. We quite literally discover within a few minutes Joel or Ellie found out what happened, so she's kind of pissed at Joel for what he did. Yada yada. Jackson's a cool place though. You see its own little thriving community, and there's families there, and I think it was important to show that part, as our heroes, or I don't even want to call them heroes anymore, but our characters are going to be leaving there here very shortly. So one of the things that happens in this game, which is I've never experienced in another game, I think Spec Ops: The Line is one of the only other games that really had me feeling some type of way. If you've never checked that out, it's a first-person shooter, and the story's crazy. But the story is really in depth. A lot goes on. There's representation for everyone. I mean, Ellie is gay, and she's in love with Dinah, who she ends up being very friendly with, and into the story, they end up even living together, which is awesome. But let's stick with Ellie here for a second before we move on to other things. You have this connection with Ellie from the first game, and with Joel too, right? There are protagonists. I mean, you kind of grew up with them, as you can say. You've seen them struggle, you've seen them get through the game. The ending of The Last of Us is pretty crazy, as Joel kills everyone to keep Ellie alive. But you have this emotional attachment to them, which is awesome, right? That just shows how good Naughty Dog is at telling stories. That being said, this game destroys that attachment for most people. Ellie, I think Naughty Dog went out of its way to show people that there really isn't any heroes in this world. I mean, you're just surviving. We kind of knew some backstory on Joel already from the first game, how he's a smuggler and he did a bunch of bad shit, to stop people. But at the end of the day, not even to stop people, but for him to survive and to get an upper advantage on other folks. So we kind of know they're not good people. Ellie's done some bad shit before. But this game takes it to the next level, especially for Ellie. So you have this emotional connection to these characters, and what do they do about 2 hours, an hour and a half into the game? They kill Joel, which is insane, because most people weren't expecting that if you weren't looking at any leaks. And like I said, you had that attachment to them, so now I can see why people would get angry there, right? Like, that's the first straw to the anger, from the internet of what's going on. You meet Abby, who is an absolute beast, and we'll talk about her a little bit here later. But Ellie's on this fight with Joel, and they're not really making up. Abby comes into the picture and kills Joel in the most brutal way you can possibly imagine. So it absolutely is shocking. It hurts, if you're really into the games, and it was just something that was like, are you serious right now? Not only did she just utterly destroy him, but it was just brutal. I mean, at the end of the day, it was really brutal. But she lets Ellie go. Ultimately, that ends up being the wrong decision. But she lets Ellie and Tommy go. And they leave. They were only there for Joel. We don't know why they were there for Joel, which, again, that piqued interest of, who the hell is Abby? Why is she killing him? We just know she's from the past. We don't know why. Naughty Dog, again, storytelling at its greatest. So Joe's gone. Ellie is now on super revenge mode. She has a lust for revenge. And this is the beginning of a downward spiral for, the protagonist of this game, a person that we've come to really be attached to. And again, I see why people get angry, right? Like, she's supposed to be the good guy, but again, I feel like they went out of their way to show us that there ain't any good guys in this world. It's just those that live and those that don't. So, Ellie from the beginning is just on this road for really just a path of destruction. Once Joe dies, it really fast forwards that. Revenge takes over. We're not going to really talk about too many aspects in the game other than Joe's death because it was really important, and possibly a couple key moments in the story. But Ellie goes to Seattle in search of Abby. That's where they're from. And as you're playing as Ellie, you really start to realize she's not a good person. Like, killing everyone that she can. I mean, I get it. I put myself in, if I was in a post-apocalyptic world and they killed my pops and I had the means like she does, I'd probably go out there for revenge too. So I can kind of see what she's wanting to do. Like, I get that part of it. But, you know, they're going through a killing frenzy, for lack of a better term. There's actually a part in this game about midway through where they go into the tunnels. The tunnels is a really fun part. You meet some new infected, and it's actually pretty cool. So you guys should definitely check the game out if you haven't already. And when you get to the tunnel, you're going to know what I'm talking about. Once you're past Seattle a couple times, now you get to play more and more as Abby. About halfway through the game, you play as Abby. What makes this game different to me is the fact that Naughty Dog is now putting you in the position of playing as the villain, right? You're playing as the antagonist in the story. The problem is, or not the problem, but one of the greatest things I've ever experienced in a video game is that as you play as Abby, you start to see what happened, right? Her dad was a doctor at the Firefly facility that Joe took Ellie from, and we all know what happened there. You meet her friends. So, like, now we know why she killed Joe, because Joe killed her pops. So you see her growing up and different things that she's learning. You meet her friends. You meet Owen and all the other folks supporting cast from Seattle. But you see their relationships. You see Abby, what she's trying to do, why she tried to accomplish. And quite honestly, for me, what happened was I started siding with Abby. Like, hey, they killed her dad. She came for revenge. She let everyone else go. It was only about that. You see the relationships between her and Owen, relationships between her and the other friends, their relationships between each other. And the craziest thing starts to happen for a group of people we really didn't know before, you know, the first part of this game. And it's, you really start to say, hey, I think Ellie might be the bad guy here. Like, she might be the villain of this story. But again, I want to emphasize Naughty Dog's kind of going out of his way to tell you, like, there are no heroes and villains in this story. It's just those who live and those that don't. So once Abby is introduced to the game fully, you play almost damn near half of the second half of the game as Abby. That part was very impactful for me. I can see why people would hate it though. Like, why am I even playing as Ellie? Like, I want to kill Ellie. For me, it was at first it was like that. Up until I started playing as her, like, man, I can't wait to kill this chick. She killed Joe. She's gonna deserve it. It's gonna be nuts. I cannot wait. Start playing as Abby, man, and you meet all her friends, their interactions. You start growing. You meet her. You know how she started to get ripped, because she's absolutely ripped. And if you're hating on her, like, that's a essential part of the story. How strong she is, how she moves things, the way she punches the infected and just flattens them out. Like, it's very important, because she's bigger than Ellie is and stronger, and she doesn't need as much help, you know, with other things. So you play with her mostly by yourself for the most part. But that emotional connection that I developed with Abby and her friends shows me how good Naughty Dog is at building worlds and building stories, because I went from absolutely hating her, I need to kill her, to, whoa, hold on, let's wait a minute here. Ellie might be the villain, and I really feel like I don't know what to do at this point. Who should I be rooting for? And the longer the game goes, the more it goes. When she gets to the part where she saves Liv, another representation, right? A transgender character being represented in a video game, along with a, you know, a gay lesbian lead. That's pretty awesome for folks that need that type of representation. We always have stuff that we can relate to. This is a really big moment in gaming for that community. But that aside, when she saves her and her sister, I just feel like Ellie and Abby are the same character, just two sides of a different coin. So like Ellie starts as our hero, right? Lack of a better term. And she goes on this arc of revenge and hatred, and she's really on a downward spiral of that. Her character is getting just destroyed, and who she is, what she's doing, how you feel towards her really changes. And Abby's on the opposite side. When we meet Abby, she is smashing Joel's head in. You absolutely hate this character. And as you play as Abby, she's on the opposite end. Instead of her character starting to go up, we start to see her connections, her friends, what she cares about, when she saves lives, and all of that stuff. It's insane how the perception or your feelings change in the game. And now that didn't happen to everyone, right? Obviously there's a lot of hate on the internet about The Last of Us Part 2, but for me, the story was so incredible. Like, it gets to the point where they finally run into each other, and now you're like, oh shit, what do I want to happen? And you're playing that first instance as Abby. How crazy is that? Like, the first time you run into her after she kills Joel, you are playing that fight as Abby. So if you're still on Team Ellie, you don't want to win this fight. Like, you just don't. So that part of the story is amazing. For me, I liked Abby by this point already in the story. Like, what she went through, and even what she went through to actually get to the theater is pretty crazy. But at this point, I'm on Team Abby, to be honest. Like, all right, so not only did Abby let this chick go at the beginning of the game, you defeat her when you're playing as her, you let her go again. And then one of the things that happens in the game, which is a real kind of a negative for me, I guess if there is a negative to really talk about, I'd say it's this next sequence called The Farm, where a little time has passed. Abby is with Dinah. They have a farm. Dinah was pregnant, if you didn't see that part, and they had the baby. So they have a nice little family. Everything's set up very well. They feed themselves, have sheep, horses, tractors. They fenced off everything. Have a really nice setup. But Tommy shows up, tells Abby he thinks she found, tells Ellie he thinks he found where Abby was. And Ellie can't let it go. So the downward spiral of her character continues. So she leaves everything behind to go find Abby, which obviously she eventually does. But that whole farm scene could have just been a cutscene. Like, I don't have to walk around and herd sheep, or walk from room to room to talk to Dinah, play the guitar. Like, I don't know. It just felt like a wasted 30 minutes there. Like, you were just trying to buy some time. It didn't fit good. You could have gave me a 10-minute little movie and I would have been okay with it. But fast forward, they meet again, right? Ellie hunts her down. Abby gets captured by another group of people in Santa Clara, and Ellie hunts her down. By this point, though, they've been fighting each other for so long. Abby has moved on, and Ellie's still on this revenge kick. When she finds her, you feel exhausted as the player. Like, I feel exhausted, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the two characters, I'm not gonna say too much about what happens. They're exhausted. So I think that's the point, right? Like, I'm emotionally exhausted at certain points in the game. Like, Joel died, all the homies died, everyone except for Dinah and Tommy. But all of Abby's friends are dead now except for Liv. Ellie's side is decimated as well, and she's basically all alone. So that emotional toll is why people take breaks from the game, not because they're bored of it, but because of everything that's happening. It's pretty heavy, to be honest. But they meet each other at the end of this game, and you can feel now you're playing as Ellie, and you're gonna fight Abby now. But you can feel the exhaustion. Like, she is exhausted. And I think that's the point. I think the point in the game is it's a game about revenge and what revenge does to you. as a person on both sides. Like, right, Abby got revenge and she decided to turn it off and go in a different path. Ellie didn't get the revenge, but she's still continuing to follow it. So like, that fight at the end is, the characters are so exhausted. Ellie's exhausted. Quite frankly, I'm exhausted, but it was the point to me. And I haven't seen anything from Naughty Dog directly, but the story itself was so amazing that at this point I want Abby to win, like for real. Even though I'm playing as Ellie, I want Abby to win. As Ellie's willing to fight, I'm like, no, get up, you gotta win this, you gotta win it. And at the end of the day, that exhaustion at the end, when you're done, when the characters are done, to convey that through a video game, Naughty Dog's the best at what they do, telling stories. Uncharted stories were amazing. The Last of Us stories are amazing. I can't wait to see what else they come up with in the future. But the story in this game really, really just blew me away. I know and understand why it wouldn't for other people. If you're still attached to Ellie, the story might have sucked. Like, quite frankly, because it makes you play as Abby and don't get closure at the end, really, if you're an Ellie fan. But that's a part of it. It's more real. Like, she gets it now. Instead of memories of Joe getting his head bashed in, she can move on from this because she decided to show some mercy. But I can understand why you wouldn't want to show mercy and really smash Abby's head in or drown her. But I mean, I was Team Abby towards the end, so I'm glad it didn't happen, and really shows the growth of Abby's character and the demise of Ellie's character. At the end of the day, I'm pretty much done with Ellie as a character. I think The Last of Us can continue on without her, or her in the background. It doesn't need to be Abby, it can be anyone else. The world is, you know, there. It doesn't even have to be in the US. We can go to Europe, we can go anywhere for The Last of Us Part 3 if there is one, or they can continue Ellie and Abby's story. It really doesn't matter. I'm excited to see what that ends up being, if it ends up being anything. By far one of the best stories I've ever played in a video game. The fact that a lot of you guys are angry about it means that it emotionally touched you, and that is great storytelling. End of the day, you're pissed off because of what happened. So think about it and you'll realize that they did a phenomenal job with this game. Gameplay wise, we expected it to be good. The first one was great. I mean, little things here and there, like sometimes you gotta walk backwards, but that's all third person games. It's kind of, you know, weird like that. But graphically, one of the most beautiful games you'll ever see on console. I mean, it looks amazing on my PlayStation Pro. Seattle looks great. Jackson looks great. The destruction in Seattle from not just the battles that were going on between the wolves and the government, but storms and the elements, you know, gaining back the city. The storm that happened in the game is actually pretty amazing. They used that throughout the arc of the story in a great way. Again, great way to tell stories and how that looks. But those are all kind of secondary things to me from what really mattered, right? Abby and Ellie, our two protagonists, start on opposite ends and somehow cross each other and end up where the first one was. To me, Abby became more real, more relatable towards the end of the game, and I wanted her to survive. Ellie became more hated. Just that lust for revenge, that hatred that is very exhausting. I wasn't with it. I was done with it. So keep it up, Naughty Dog. You guys did a great job. I think this is one of the coolest, funnest games I played as far as story-wise. Very, very entertained and very enthralled into everything that happened. Everyone is valid to their opinion, so I'm definitely aware of the folks that hated it, and I guess you're right. You know, we're right, you're right, everyone's right. You're entitled to see what that looks like or to feel that way, and it really depends on who you identify the most with, and that's great storytelling. Who do you like the most? It forced us to play as who we considered the villain, and through the narrative showed us not everything is as it seems. and you can really relate to characters no matter what they're doing. So great job, Naughty Dog. I appreciate the effort on the video game. This was an awesome game to play. I might run through it again. Team Abby all the way for me. After she killed Joe, very justified reason. I don't know if she needed to do it that brutally, but from that moment that you start playing with her in Seattle, my love for Abby grew a ton, and it just kind of stayed there throughout the whole game. So if you haven't checked this game out, I probably spoiled a bunch of things for you. Make sure you check it out, see what it's about, and give me your feedback. If you have played the game, in the comments, let's have a discussion. What did you like? What didn't you like? What team were you on? Team Abby or Team Ellie? Who did you like better? Who did you like playing with? What did you think of the story? Did you dig it as much as I did, or did you absolutely hate it? And hey, keep it respectful in the comments, but we're all entitled to our opinions, and at the end of the day, the fact that everyone's so emotional about this game, whether in a good way or a negative way, shows the greatness of Naughty Dog's team in creating stories. So thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you guys checking out my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. See you next time. I'm going to be playing Ghost next, so we'll be watching that together and going through the story there, and I'll give you my thoughts at the end of that story. Deuces!